talking about our KIU research agenda. We made a lot of inputs, and eventually it was approved by Senate in June 2020. It's quite a big document, but it has 6 major items: the introduction, our goals and objectives as an institution, the research structure in KIU, our KIU research strategy, our KIU research areas, and our KIU research clusters. I will briefly go through all of them. The major introduction, of course, is to think of the fact that research is a creative, systematic, and transformative work undertaken with the intention of increasing the stock of knowledge, including knowledge of humans, culture, and society, and to use the accumulated knowledge to devise new applications, confirm facts, reaffirm the result of previous work, solve new and existing problems, support theorems, and develop new theories. But the most important part of research is that, one, it's essential to economic and social development. But as far as research is concerned, it is one of the most distinguishing and competitive strengths for universities globally. One of the reasons why we are ranked the best private university in East Africa is because of our research outlook. It's a major competitive edge for most universities. And then, like we said, the KIU holds the position of being the best private university. At that time, we were the 4th. We are now the 3rd best. That will be corrected due to, amongst other factors, our research output. And that's why we must keep up that output. So to this end, our research agenda is a strategic document which was expected to drive our research activities for the period 2020 to 2025. A research document is not a static document. This document was approved to drive our research from 2020 to 2025. So what was our goals and objectives? In preparing this research agenda, we had 4 major goals. The first one was to provide guidance and direction for all university research activities so that we are not dispersed. The second was to improve funding for research and innovation. Because if we are all saying the same thing and we have a focus, it's easy for us to improve our funding. And then to strengthen research management, coordination, and control functions, which is one of the reasons why we are here. Because research is not an activity that is loosely guided. And then we want to promote and foster a professional and harmonious environment that promotes scholarship and excellence. Those are our 4 goals and objectives. So what is our research structure in KIU? We do research under 4 categories in KIU. The first category is undergraduate students research. It's our basic research work, undergraduate students program. And this is managed by schools and colleges with appropriate guidelines and procedures. The second level of research that we do is the postgraduate students research, masters and PhDs, which is managed by the Directorate of Higher Degrees. The third level of research is what we call individual staff researchers. As individuals, we all have our different research projects that we are working on. And of course, the fourth level is our collaborative and interdisciplinary research work, this is one of such efforts. Collaborative and interdisciplinary research work. Now, what is our KIU research strategy? Research agenda must have a strategy. A strategy is how do we hope to achieve this research agenda? Now, it is based on the university's strategic plan. As a university, we have a strategic plan. And that strategic plan has 3 goals. 1, we want to be a research-driven, pro-community university that embodies innovation and excellence. We want to be a market leader in producing highly competitive graduates for Africa and the global labor market. The reason why we go through all the procedures with DHDR, hearings and different things. It's because we want to produce graduates out of excellence. And then we want to be a renowned provider for innovative but affordable academic programs, which are responsive to current and emerging human needs. These are the three basic strategies we have adopted in KIU. Now, in order for our research to make sense, we must be part of the global world and the African world. And that's why this research agenda was prepared using 4 important documents. The first document is the Ugandan Vision 2040, because we are in Uganda, and it's accompanying national development plans. If you are doing a research in Uganda that is useless to the country, it's not research anymore. The second one is the Ugandan National Science, Technology, Engineering and Innovation System. It's a major document that drives industrial development in Uganda. The third one is the African Union Agenda 2063. The African Union also has an agenda for research. And of course, the fourth one is the Global Sustainable Development Goals. We all know it. So our research must fall in within these 4 major documents. If it is not within those 4 major documents, then it's useless. So let's look at the Ugandan Vision 2040. This was a document which was designed by the Ugandan government to transform Uganda from a peasant to a modern and prosperous country within 30 years. That was the plan. And this document was approved by the Ugandan cabinet in 2007. The vision of the country in 2007 was that by 2017, Uganda will be a lower middle income country, which was achieved, and attaining its target of USD 9,500 per capita in 2040. That is the aim of the Ugandan vision. Projection further indicate that Uganda will be the first world country in the next 50 years. It's a good dream. And the reasons are quite obvious. Uganda is the second youngest country in the world. So it is possible. The decline in Europe today is because the minimum age in most European countries, the average age in most European countries is 50 years and above. So they are having declining productivity. That's why they keep looking for Africans to come over there. But Uganda is lucky. Uganda is a young country. At the last projection, 80% of Ugandans are aged below 35, which means there's a lot of reasons for hope. And of course, to achieve this, the GDP growth rate will have to be consistent at about 8.2% per annum, which will translate into the GDP of 580.5 billion. The good news is that Uganda has grown consistently above 7% in the last 10 years. So it is not a misplaced dream. Of course, the main challenge for every vision is how does this growth translate into eradicating poverty? That's the major problem. And then to implement this vision, the Ugandan government had what they call the National Development Plans, the NDPs. And these NDPs were short-term, every 5 years. And of course, there are 6 NDPs that are expected to be implemented. To date, 3 NDPs have been implemented. NDP 1, NDP 2, and NDP 3. They have been produced and implemented. The first NDP 1 was for the period 2010-2011 to 2014-2015. The second one was from 2015-2016 to 2019-2020. And the third one, which was approved on 20th January 2020, is for the period 2020-2025. NDP 1 was largely based on strengthening the foundations of the economy and to set the stage for future economic growth. Most international organizations, especially the World Bank, believe that NDP 1 was a success. Because if you look at Uganda between 2010 and 2014, that was when Uganda migrated into a lot of stability. NDP 2 was built on the achievements of NDP 1 with the theme strengthening Ugandan competitiveness for sustainable wealth creation, inclusive growth and employment. NDP2 was expected to provide strategic direction of propelling the country during those 5 years to a middle-level status, which also was achieved, because currently Uganda is regarded as a middle-level country, just like Tanzania. And it was done through increased sustainable production, productivity, and value addition in key growth opportunities, increasing the stock and quality of strategic infrastructure to accelerate the country's competitiveness, enhance human capital development, and strengthen mechanisms for quality, effective, and efficient service delivery. If you look at the aspect of enhancing human capital development, one of the goals of the Ugandan government is that within a period of 10 years, they want to produce at least 1,000 PhDs annually. And the last records have shown that presently, Uganda produces between 200 to 250 PhDs every year. So there's still a setback in that. And that is where we have an edge. As an academic institution, in propelling that aspect, we must provide that leadership. So NDP2 targeted 5 key growth areas. Agriculture. It's on record that currently Uganda is a major country that provides food for the World Food Program. That has worked. Tourism. Uganda is competing, but before COVID, Uganda was the next tourism destination after Kenya. In terms of minerals, this has also been a setback because the government is trying to make sure they do not have the issues of resource costs. If you look at, there's a global issue called resource costs. Countries that have a lot of resources like Nigeria are dealing with serious environmental pollution problems. So on the one hand, we have resources. On the other hand, that resources becomes a problem. So the Ugandan government has been trying very hard to ensure that in their policy framework, this is taken care of. And one country that has shown a lot of example to the whole world is Norway. Manage the environment. Every other person has not been able to do it. That's why they call it the Dutch disease. In terms of infrastructure, I mean, we all know that infrastructure-wise, Uganda has really, really grown in terms of the buildings they have and other things they do. And then human capital development, of course, has been very, very slow because of the population. The major challenge, of course, has been the issue of the political environment. But the private sector has been strengthened to provide and to create jobs. At that meeting, we were told that every month, all the CEOs of private companies in Uganda meet regularly to evaluate what they are doing in terms of creating jobs. Because that is the major crisis in Uganda, job creation. If you have a population that is under 35, they need jobs. But the point is this, what kind of jobs are you talking about? Are you asking for jobs as security men, waiters in hotels, salespeople or sales girls? No. It must be middle and high-level jobs. So this is part of it. And then, of course, to consolidate and increase the stock and quality of production infrastructure, enhance the productivity and social well-being of the population. There's a paradox in Uganda, for example. Uganda produces the highest quantity of milk in the whole of East Africa. Because as part of the poverty eradication program of the government, every household was given a cow. So most people milk cow in the morning and in the evening. So there's plenty of milk in Uganda. But what do you do with it? We know that milk is part of pharmaceuticals. So the country has to now get a lot of pharmaceutical companies and companies that will use milk. Another aspect which is confronting the government is grains. Uganda produces large quantity of grains. And I'm sure you followed in the news the last time when about 160 trucks were returned back from Kenya. It was just politics. Because unlike Kenya, Uganda has more posho. You have matoke. Kenya does not have matoke. So for them to produce posho, they need a lot of grains. They need a lot of grains for their breweries. There's more beer consumption in Kenya than in Uganda. So what do you do with those grains? Do you increase the size of the brewery in a place like Kampala, where there are a lot of Muslims who are not supposed to drink alcohol? It's only in Nigeria where we have a lot of Muslims and Christians, and the breweries make profits annually. They make more profit than the banks, and they are wondering who is drinking the beer. So these are some of the issues in terms of development. And of course, strengthen the role of the states. This is controversial. Strengthen the role of the states in guiding, facilitating development. What that means is, this NDP program says the state must be the driver. So sometimes it's like a contradiction. On the one hand, you want the private sector to drive the economy. On the other hand, you want the state to give guidance. But these issues will be resolved. So the key issues in the NDP 3, which is the season we are in now, is agro-industrialization, agricultural value chain. How do you carry through, instead of taking raw food to Kenya and Tanzania, how do you process food and add value to food? Import replacement, this has become a major issue. A lot of production done in Uganda are from the Chinese. This was a policy Nigeria adopted in the late 70s. What it actually involves is, when you have a company that takes its import from outside, you try to replace by producing some of those parts locally. And then export promotion. At the last count, I think most of Uganda's GDP comes from agriculture. This is not too much money. Industrial goods and products will make more sense. Harnessing the tourism potential. That's why we have a degree program here in tourism. You can only enhance tourism when you have personnel. I remember during the COVID season, the European Union gave all the tourist sites in Uganda about $3 million to improve on their infrastructure. Although we know it was for a selfish reason. The aim is that when the COVID ends, our European friends will have a place to come and hide in Uganda because of the weather. And of course, also, there is the issue, the cross-cutting issues includes environmental management. One of the problems right now in Uganda is the problem of environment. What is happening in Uganda now, nobody is processing waste. They are just displacing waste. You carry it from one location to another. Nobody is processing the waste. The city is growing very fast. What the people who do environmental cleaning simply do is, they take the waste from our homes and relocate the waste somewhere else. So the heaps are piling up somewhere. Nobody is converting them. Gender mainstreaming. There's a lot of gender imbalance in development here. HIV is still a major issue here. Science and technology. Then culture and mindset change. This is also a major issue here in Uganda. A lot of mindset change. Human rights, resilient to environmental shocks, and social protection. We remember during the COVID, it was reported that there was a high surge in domestic violence in most homes. What are we doing? And me, I've challenged many of the women groups that they are not active enough. We have women MPs, but we are not seeing results. I'll give you a good example in KIU here. That's why I have delayed deliberately with the gender policy, because I'm still trying to get the women angry, but I've not succeeded. KIU is the only place, every month you are passing by KIU, you see a lot of pregnant women. By 4 o'clock, most women in KIU cannot sit at their desk. They are going to pick their children. Yet I know in Nigeria that one of the rules that we have, which I'm still planning to do here, but it can't succeed if I don't get the support of the women. Usually in Nigeria, when you have an institution that has more than 10 women, you must have a crèche. A crèche is a place dedicated to keeping your children from age 0 to age 3. And it is managed exclusively by the women. They hire the nurses, they keep their children there, and we discovered that with that, the productivity of women increased. Because at our university in Ibadan, it was discovered that once women get into childbearing age, their careers are usually set back between 10 to 15 years. Once a woman starts giving birth, the issue of taking care of the children sometimes impacts on her academic progression. So most women were not coming up for promotion, but immediately the crèche was created, which is exclusively managed by the women. It's not a university thing. The women meet, they set up their own management committee, they set up the place. At the last count when I was there, it was almost like a mini hotel. In fact, the women in my university now went ahead to say, okay, we are going to open the crèche to other women who want to bring their children there. And those ones pay 3 times the amount the staff pay. So at the end of the day, it is women from outside who are funding the crèche, and those inside pay little or nothing. And to make it easy for the staff within, you can either pay daily or they deduct it from your salary, but it is exclusively managed by the women. And the good thing also is that students who are females, who have children, are allowed to bring their children there. I've been talking to different women on campus, but nobody seems to take it seriously. And usually when you have such gender imbalance, it usually leads to insensitivity. I don't know why it happens. So the women are insensitive to their own problems because they have become men. So I'm hoping there will be a mindset change. And that is why my secretary, when she had a baby, I insisted she should bring her baby to work every day because I want to create a crisis. But the women are so insensitive. Nobody is even worried. And there are so many women carrying stomachs around. When they give birth, where will they keep their children? It means they'll become unproductive for at least 4 to 6 months when they are taking care of their children. So what do we do? So it's a challenge. What do we conduct a research first to ask the opinion of the women? Do we call a meeting of all the KIU women? Who will be the chairperson for the meeting? The problem with managing women is that they must have a champion they all trust. If they have a champion they don't trust, she will talk and talk and talk, nothing will happen. So who is going to be the champion? Dr. Sophie, can you be the champion? Anyway, but seriously speaking, it's a research I want to conduct, and I want to send questionnaires around. And that's why I've said we are not going to approve a gender policy until that problem is dealt with. Because 60% of the women that I see on this campus are still in the baby production stage. How do they manage their children? How do they manage their careers? If we don't deal with that problem, we are going to have productivity issues down the line. Because by the time they have 2 or 3 children that they are managing, if you tell them to do a PhD, you are just pouring water on stone, nothing will happen. Because once they cross that gate and they pick their children, all the models you have put on their head, done. And this will continue until the child at least is able to manage him or herself. And that's at the age of 12. So what do we do? It's an area of research that I'm still trying to look at clearly. So let's now look at the Ugandan National Science, Technology, Engineering, and Innovation System, which is also one of the success points. In the last 30 years, Uganda has consistently improved on the Global Innovation Index. And in 2014, Uganda was classified as an innovation achiever. As somebody in entrepreneurship, I know that usually when you go to any international forum, Uganda was regarded as a model for entrepreneurship. Uganda is one country where people are very willing to start a business. But the flip side is, 80% of those businesses don't survive the first year. So what is the problem? You hardly meet Ugandans who are not interested in starting a business. Several factors have come up. Copycatting. Some don't have an idea of how to do entrepreneurship. And that's why one of the things I hope to also do here is to have a center for excellence for entrepreneurship and innovation. If we can have an innovation hub here, where we can grow businesses as a model for society. So, the implication of this is that Uganda's score relative to its GDP is significantly higher than that of other economies. In fact, the Tony Elumelu Foundation always keeps some special spaces for Ugandan entrepreneurs. But most times, they don't come forward. And so they are taken up by Kenyans. So what do we do? How do we change that process? And that's why when the Uganda innovation policies were enacted in 2008, the National Industrialization Policy, the STI policy in 2009, National Development Plan 2010, it has improved significantly innovation activities, but it is not annexed. That's why the agricultural sector development strategy and other plans are there. And the overall objective of the Ugandan economy is to expect to serve as an engine for implementation of the Ugandan Vision 2040. The reason why there seems to be a disconnect in Uganda between growth and poverty is this issue. The country is growing at 7%. You'll be amazed that Nigeria has not grown more than 4-5% in the last 10 years. But Uganda grows at 7%. So there's a lot of money around Uganda. Yet there's a lot of poverty. And it is because of this issue of not being able to allow enterprise to survive. 80% of enterprise in Uganda are gone within 1 year. What do we do? And it's expected to contribute new knowledge. We're supposed to contribute new knowledge, skills, and capacities for improved productivity and welfare improvement of population. And these policies were supposed to also be a strategic driver, especially in health, energy, education, environmental services, and technology. So what is happening? There are a lot of innovation companies in Uganda. There are a lot of innovation activities, entrepreneurial programs. I go to a lot of competitions. People present wonderful ideas, but within 1 year, it dies. What do we do as researchers to contribute knowledge to make sure that this trend can be reversed? Because Nigeria, the trend is the other way around. We spend more time encouraging people to start businesses. And when they start, it survives. Here, people want to start businesses, but they die. How do we correct that trend? That has been the challenge of the STI policy. And that's why, even in 2016, they had to bring up the Ministry of Science, Technology, and Innovation with 3 mandates. The first was to provide better coordination of STI activities. The second was to build effective linkage with all actors. And the third was to provide clear policy direction. Because this is the major challenge in Uganda. How does innovation and entrepreneurial activities become driver for development? Because there's already a desire, and the population is there for that purpose. Well, in order to understand this, I decided to look at 2 publications that were being on Uganda. The first was a publication by the World Intellectual Property Organization. And it was done by staff of Uganda National Science and Tech with an international collaborator. And he was saying, Effective Innovation Policies for Developing Uganda. That was the title of that study. It was done, I think, about 2010. And the objective was to look at which innovation policies have worked in Uganda, which ones are not working. And of course, this opens up a new area of research for us. And they said, look, a lot of them have worked, such as the Private Sector Foundation for Capacity and Policy Advocacy, 1995. It has worked. There are more private enterprise now. The Enterprise Uganda Foundation Limited for promoting entrepreneurship and business growth, which was done in 1991 with the Uganda Investment Authority. It was meant to create a favorable climate. The favorable climate is there. Uganda is one place where, between here and Kasanga, people from South Sudan, Nigeria, Ethiopians, everybody has businesses around here. It means that those policies worked. So we find out that those policies have worked. Part of those policies working is the fact that it's on record that 72% of educational institutions in Uganda are privately owned, while government owns only 28%. It means those policies have worked. But it seems the ones that survive are the big players. But the small players are the ones we need. So how and in what way can that be done? Another weakness which was captured by that report is the fact that, most of the public universities in Uganda only focus on science courses, science, technology, and engineering courses. It's only the private universities that are looking at business courses. It's one of the weaknesses of the system here. And then another thing was that teaching is the major preoccupation. I remember when we were doing the profiling, for some lecturers, they just didn't understand why their pictures should be online, their publications should be online. Because as far as they are concerned, I teach my courses, I mark my cards, I mark my exams, I submit my results, the students graduate, case closed. What is this new romance of I must publish papers and put them online? Because in Uganda, it's still a major issue. Teaching is still considered the basic job of a university. And it was even discovered in their report that only 4% of government funding goes to research in Uganda. So how do we change all those things? But however, the good thing is that there's a gradual linkage between university, industry, and government in Uganda. So it is hoped that by the time this NDP3 is completed, there'll be a greater, things that are done there. And of course, there's the ease of doing business in the informal sector. It was discovered that in the informal sector is the sector that is not formal. There is a lot of taxations. There are a lot of different agencies giving people different activities. So that has not helped. So the report says that there must be a policy mix between public and private sector because there's a divide. Okay, look at COVID. Government supported public universities. They promised to support private university. They didn't support. Up to now, private schools are still waiting for funds. In fact, most private schools are not opening now because they are owing the banks. So if their children pay school fees, the banks will just recover their loans. So it's better they just remain closed. And it's been projected that between this year and the next 3 years, you are likely to find more private universities being put up for sale. And already a lot of Western investors are beginning to smell the coffee in Uganda. So you are going to see a lot of private universities that will be bought over by foreign partners. I mean, a good example is Cavendish University. We all know they are owned by Americans now. It's going to happen more because there is a huge population of people here who can go to school. So it's good business. It's good business. But the major problem with the private universities is funding. Unlike in Nigeria where we have an educational bank, there's no educational bank here. Educational banks offer universities loans that stretch out for 20, 30 years. But here, the educational institutions have to go to the same commercial banks with very high interest rates. The second publication highlighted the research gap in Uganda STI, and it was a publication by the World Bank. It was titled Science, Technology and Innovation in Uganda, Recommendation for Policy and Action. And that report was for a period between 2006 and 2010. And it was based on case studies from 6 sectors: agriculture, health, energy, information and communication technology, transport, and logistics. The objective of the result was conducted across small and medium-sized enterprise, universities, and government entities. It was to offer the Ugandan government increased clarity about how to harness science, technology, and innovation for propelling the economy. Among several recommendations, the report stated that there is a need to focus on knowledge exchange among industrial research centers, academic labs, and professional societies. Let me explain what knowledge exchange means. Knowledge exchange means sometimes the industries are not doing very well because they are not harnessing knowledge. If you go to most departments, people have done wonderful projects, but it just ends on the shelf. Nobody's sharing those knowledge out. And that's one of the reasons why we're having repositories here. And the aim of our repositories really is to make sure that people can harness the knowledge. But there's also another problem. Industries in Uganda, do they really trust our research? How do we create some synergy where we make our research available to them? And of course, there's also a need for the country to have clearly defined local and regional and national science policy. A major challenge in the planning policy of Uganda is that Uganda plans like a unitary country. When I mean unitary, There's only one policy framework. It doesn't work anywhere. If you go to most countries, there are several different layers of policy because people are different. If you are going to implement a policy in this country, you must appreciate the different entities and you must plan differently. So that's one of the things the report showed us. So let's look at the African Union agenda. African Union too. If you remember, the African Union was formed in 1963 in Addis Ababa. And as part of their own development strategy, they came up with this agenda 2063, 100 years after. What do we want for Africa? They were looking at Pan-Africanism and African Renaissance. And I think part of the product of this African Union agenda is the African Free Trade Zone. I don't know if we are familiar with it. Africa Free Trade Zone is going to make Africa one big market, meaning that we are going to relax all our tariffs. If you look at Europe, Europe is made up of so many countries. They were fighting each other for 200 years. They woke up one morning and realized that it was better they are friends than their enemies. So they started the European Union. And because of that European Union, they have common trade, common monies, and their economies gradually improve. But if you look at Africa, everybody is doing protectionism. At the end of the day, the things that should bring us mutual success, we are denying it to each other. So the African free trade, which is starting this year, is such that it will break down those barriers and Africa will be one big market. Because Africa is the future. We have the youngest population and it is projected that in another 40 years, we'll have the biggest population in the world. If you look at the strength of India, China, and the US, it's basically their population. US has always maintained a population of 400 million and above. Because population is your strength in terms of markets. If I produce, there was a businessman who came to establish a business in Nigeria, and his argument was simple. He came from Kenya. He said if he establishes a business in Kenya, he will need 5 regulations. He will need to meet the regulation in Uganda, in Tanzania, in Rwanda, and in Burundi. Whereas if he has a business in Nigeria, with a population of 200 million people, the population in Nigeria is more than the entire population of the East African region. It's one big market for him. There was a soft drink company that produces 2 million bottles per day. And within 3 hours, their products are off the market, like Acera. They had to find a way of increasing their production to about 5 million bottles per day because of the population. But if you produce 5 million bottles of soft drinks per day in Uganda, some of them will be thrown into the sea. So, this is one of the things the African Free Trade Zone is supposed to help us with. And of course, they had quite a lot of issues. High standard of living, well-educated citizens, skills revolution. And I must say, one of those who have really played a major role in making sure that AFTA works has been the president of Uganda. He has played a very, very positive role. Another person who has played a very positive role is the president of Rwanda. Both of them have really advocated the fact that why should African leaders go to London to discuss Africa's problem? Why can't we meet here and talk about our problems locally? Why do we do Commonwealth meetings and then we all gather and then the UK Premier will call all African leaders to come to UK to discuss Africa's problem? Why can't we talk about our problems here as Africans and solve them? That's why they are looking for financial and monetary institutions. Look at one of the selling points of Uganda is the fact that you can walk into Uganda and take visa at the point of entry. The same thing with Kenya. If you look at the region, the sub-region in Africa that has succeeded so much is ECOWAS. Once you are from an ECOWAS country, you just walk in at the airport. All of us have the same passport, ECOWAS, green. Once you walk in, if I'm going to Ghana today, I don't worry about visa. I just walk into Ghana. And it has improved a lot of trading in West Africa. Of course, the only problem now in West Africa is the trade imbalance. 97% of all the private universities in Ghana are owned by Nigerians. 80% of the banks are owned by Nigerians. And the same trend is happening in Kenya. One professor in December last year wrote an article and said, the biggest challenge to East Africa is Nigeria, not China. Because most of the financial systems in Kenya are owned by Nigerians. And there's a similar trend here in Uganda. The only bank that is owned by Uganda and is functioning is Centenary Bank. Every other bank is owned by someone else. So why is it happening? But the good thing is, if there's AFTA, which makes it possible for Ugandans, and one of the reasons they found out in Uganda is because of this fear of being exposed. Ugandans have money, but they keep it in boxes at home. They don't invest. Rich Ugandans don't invest because they are afraid of being identified. Do you know that that building is owned by so rich man? So they spend plenty of money at weddings. They build big houses that are not functional. There are a lot of houses in Kampala are not functional. You build an 8-story building that has no lifts. Who is going to hire? Who is going to stay on the 8th floor? Which person is going to go to a building and be looking for a customer at the 8th floor? So we hope that will also change. So that's the African Union agenda, which is meant to help Africans develop, and by 2063, that will be done. Then, of course, we come to the big one, the Sustainable Development Goals, Agenda 2030, which was brought up by the World Bank in the year 2000. It succeeded the Millennium Development Goals. The Millennium Development Goals were 10. They were 7. They were now expanded to 17. And then we have the 17 goals. Goal number 1 is no poverty. The hope is that by 2030, nobody will live under $1 per day. The second goal is zero hunger. It's expected that people will not be hungry anymore. Because the amazing thing about the world is that there's enough food produced to go around the world. But due to trade issues, food is used now as an economic thing. America throws away food to the sea every year rather than give it out. Good health and well-being. We know that one of the goals about this is about life birth. For example, I know in Nigeria, the biggest challenge we have is infant mortality, neonatality. Most children in Nigeria die within 3 months of birth due to issues of malaria and due to the problem of treating the umbilical cord. Among our Fulanis, where we have the high mortality ratio, which is cultural, a woman is considered a champion when she helps herself to give birth alone. So in Fulani land, when a woman is in labor, other women stay outside and allow her to give birth so that they can congratulate her. So you find out all the hospitals in northern Nigeria, they go for all the antenatal cares. But when it gets to the time of giving birth, because among the Fulani women, it's a comparative strength when they say, I helped myself to give birth alone. Meanwhile, down south, if a woman is in labor and other women don't help, some of them could even be arrested for attempted murder. So you find that in Nigeria, we have a lot of people dying due to that process in the north. So how do you change it? Of course, quality education. Education has 3 issues: access and quality. In Africa, there's access to education. In most countries, there are 6 levels of education. There are those who go to primary school so that they can have a certificate that they went to primary school. It's not of any use to them. They may not use it beyond there, but at least they have the certificate at home. There are those who will go to primary school so that they can go to some public secondary school. There are those who are going to use the primary school certificate to go and learn a trade. So there are about 6 levels. So the issue in goal number 4 is quality education, not just in terms of access. How does that education translate? In Nigeria, our biggest challenge today, a lot of university graduates, no job, because the focus of our education is more clerical. People are looking for office jobs. How do you change their mindset to do practical jobs? So quality education is goal number 4. Then there's this issue of gender equality. It's also a major challenge, and it's not just a Nigerian problem. In the US, men and women are paid differently. It's still a major problem in the US. A lot of people will be shocked to know that there are some states in the US where women are still married off at the age of 13. women are married off at the age of 13. It's still a common thing. So gender equality, how do you make the rules? Then there are some occupations that are not allowed to both sexes. If you ask me, if KIU was in Nigeria, for example, they will halt the employment of women and insist on the employment of men. Because here we have a lot of gender inequality. 65% of KIU staff are women. Benson, am I wrong? Everywhere you turn, you see a female face. Everywhere you turn. Gender inequality. And you see, the danger with gender inequality is that most men in KIU have the tendency to become polygamous. Yes, because there's gender inequality. It's the women that see them every day. Is it not? They are used to sharing the men for assignments, for reports, and all that. So why wouldn't they be their wives? So if you ask my candid opinion, we need to employ more men in KIU. Then the goal number 6 is clean water and sanitation. This is a major goal. Affordable and clean energy. Solar, renewable energy systems. Goal number 8 is decent work and economic growth. The uniqueness of South Africa is that they were able to elevate what we call menial work. In South Africa, a cleaner earns sometimes as much as a manager. So they are proud of being called cleaners. They are very proud to be called cleaners. So some of them don't bother to go to school. The same problem in the US. Most people after secondary school can get a job, so they don't care about university education. So how do we make decent work and economic growth a target? Of course, industry, innovation, and infrastructure. We've talked about it at length. That's goal number 9. Reduce inequalities. Too much inequality. How do you reduce inequalities? Then sustainable cities and communities. One of the goals of sustainable cities, how do you make cities better? One of the uniqueness of Kampala, which many people don't appreciate, Kampala is one of the few cities you drive through and you see green trees and everywhere. That's why more people are healthy here. If you come to most cities in Europe, there's a lot of illness because you will not see any tree. You know, trees produce oxygen and they usually help. That's why if you are in a jam in Kampala, you can manage. That's why people don't hoot in a jam in Kampala. If you put a Nigerian in this kind of jam, it is madness. Everybody is hooting. Because there are no trees, nothing. So everybody is really choked up. So how do we make our cities more sustainable? Then responsible consumption and production. This is a major challenge. In the Western world, it was discovered that a lot of people waste food. They waste food. How do you do responsible consumption and production? Climate action is something important. Life below water, life on land, and then peace, justice, and strong institution. That is what everybody needs. And then partnership for the goals. These are the SDG goals which we considered. So based on this, we did a research. We asked all schools to give us their research areas. If you recall, we asked every school to give us their research areas. And all the schools submitted their research areas, both at the main campus, at the Western campus. And then based on that, we came up with what we consider to be our research agenda. I will send this document to you because it's all been approved by Senate. And I will quickly want to stop this one so that I can share the research areas of each school as well as our final research areas. I hope I'm not boring everybody. I hope I'm not boring. Yeah, thank you so much. You know, one of the beautiful things this report helped me to do was really to appreciate Uganda as a country. By the time I went through the policies, the NDPs, the goals of the country, I told one of my friends, Ugandans are so lucky, but they don't know it. You have a consistent growth plan. You have a consistent pattern of development. Whereas most African countries, the major headache they have is this start and stop. One government comes on board, it stops. Another one comes on board, it starts. But Uganda has this beautiful growth trajectory. And my prayer is that politically, once the country stabilizes and can maintain this growth structure, I bet you the goals of the NDPs will surely be achieved. So let me pause this sharing for now and then share the overall plan of each school, the research areas of each school, and then the research agenda that we proposed. You know, we cannot determine for each school where their research focus are. Your research focus is based on the competencies you have. But based on that, we came up with 7 research clusters in KIU. Research cluster number 1 is law, good governance, and inequalities. And we believe that the schools that will participate in these research areas are School of Law, College of Economics, Social Sciences, SUMAC, and the School of Allied Health Sciences. Then the second research cluster is education, gender, social management, and inclusive development. The third research cluster is energy, environment, and climate change. The fourth one is science, technology, and innovation management. The fifth one is public health, infectious and re-emerging diseases. The sixth one is health systems, sustainable livelihoods, and non-communicable diseases. And of course, the seventh one is entrepreneurship, employability, and skill development. So these are the 7 clusters that we have been able to distill from the research focus and from all the long history I've given you: Uganda National Policy, Science and Tech Policy, African Union Policy, and SDG rules. So thank you for listening. I hope I didn't talk for too long. Thank you so much.